I had started on finishing up chapter 16 and started on chapter 17 last week. And when I ran into chapter 17 and 18 in Revelation, I got to admit that I've always had trouble with these two chapters, 17 and 18. And so I spent a lot of time last weekend and a little bit more this weekend really digging into it and getting a better understanding. And through a couple of commentaries I read, particularly J. Vernon McGee, I thought he did an excellent job of really. So I'm almost using his outline a little bit, quite a bit actually, on this one, plus some of my own thoughts on it. So if you ever listened to my last time I spoke on Revelation, I'm taking a slightly different approach, where I saw chapter 17 a little bit more like it was talking about both commercial and religious Babylon. But now I see chapter 17 as strictly the religious portion of Babylon, and that the fall of the Babylon you see in chapter 18 is talking about, in the beginning, right at the end of chapter 17 is the fall of the religious aspect of Babylon, which really happened about the midpoint when Satan, through the Antichrist, wanted to be worshipped directly and not have any competition with a church. And that's when the ecclesiastical Babylon fell. And where the confusion for me is that I see both Rome and Babylon as both in the end time scenario. And so doesn't Dr. McGee. And so that when I read his commentary on it, I said, man, that's it. That's the answer. Because as I read, it made more and more sense that you have two Babylons. You have the religious Babylon, centered out of Rome, and then you have the governmental or commercial Babylon that I believe is going to be a rebuilt Babylon on the Euphrates River. And so I'm kind of going in that general direction now, instead of where they're one place. Like the confusion factor came to exactly, most people believe that at least the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, the way it's organized, could be the future one world religion, which ends up becoming the one world religion of the Antichrist, along with a lot of other pagan type Christian, so-called quote unquote Christian organizations of that time frame will come together and form this religious Babylon. So I decided to do a little bit of a review on chapter 17 that I went over last week, because I didn't finish chapter 17 last week. So I threw the notes in from last week in the handout. And did we even get the handout out? Yes. Okay. It's pretty long, but the first part of it I'm really only going to read through it. I'm not going to read every verse. So they're there to look up. It's a lot of the stuff I went through last week. But I'm just going to run through and kind of do an overview of chapter 17 and then start on chapter 18. So many great issues are brought to crisis in the Great Tribulation that it's difficult to keep them all separated. And I'll admit, many fine prophecy teachers disagree on some details. And this fact should not be disturbing to us, because I truly believe that, and so doesn't a few other people I read, that a lot of people actually in the prophecy world, that the closer we get to the tribulation, everything makes more sense. And that's a derivative of Daniel 12:4. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. And I think that's knowledge of the Bible, actually. So if you remember that in verses 8 and 9, even Daniel himself was a bit confused as to what was going on. And the Lord basically said, don't worry about it. It's not for your time frame. I'll read from 8 and 9. And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. So even the Lord did not expect Daniel to understand these different prophecies that we're reading. As an example, for everyone, a great example is the two witnesses. up until even within my own generation, how would that be possible that everyone on the planet would be able to see the two witnesses not only die, but also be raptured into heaven after 3.5 days? And nowadays, that's a done deal. I mean, as I showed you that one time, there's a 24-hour camera on parts of Israel, and particularly the Wailing Wall, which I have a feeling might be where the two witnesses spend a lot of their time. So we see that in Revelation 11, 9 and 11. And even in the 1970s, cell phones weren't out yet. And getting news from around the world was not something instantaneous. Typically, you waited, you caught up some things on the evening news, but this idea of seeing something that was happening at the exact moment that it was happening was unheard of. And I'll just read these two verses here as a reminder. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half. See, the people, kindreds and tongues and nations. So it's like everyone's going to be able to see this live. And shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And then jump into verse 11. And after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. So, and this is a direct quote from McGee himself. This is especially evident relative to the two Babylons in chapters 17 and 18. The questions are there two Babylons, and are they in two different geographical locations, as they're representative of two systems? And they two little cities, or are they the same? The answer to these questions will become more apparent as our redemption draws near. It appears at this present time, in my judgment, that two distinct cities are in view. And I'm really starting to lean in that direction myself. I cannot scripturally put them both in the same place. So, chapter 17 is pointing to the apostate church, spoken of in Revelation 2, 18 through 29. I won't read the entire thing, the church of Thyatira. Let's just review a few verses that really point to this end times church. Starting in verse 18, and unto the church of angel of the church in Thyatira write, these things saith the Lord, Son of God, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass. I know thy works and charity, and service and faith, and thy patience, and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. Boy, does that sound like a works-based type organization. Verse 20, notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest the woman Jezebel, which calls herself a prophetess, to teach and seduce my servants to commit fornication, and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. Does this sound like a little bit like some of the churches of today? Sure does. That they're teaching false doctrine. And I give her space to repent of her fornication, and she repented not, basically over 2,000 years. And behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that commit adultery with her into great tribulation. There's the key there. This particular church is going to will go into the great tribulation unless they repent of their deeds. Well, I have a funny feeling they did not repent of their deeds. What I really like, though, is the coming verses next, when it talks about there will be, but unto you I say, and unto the rest in Thyatira, as many as have not this doctrine, and which have not known the depths of Satan as they speak, I will put upon you none other burden. This almost seems to be talking about a remnant church that is not buying into the world church of that time frame. And also, I believe in the tribulation, the same thing is going to be happening. So I can see where this particular church is really representative of the end times church of that time frame, but also most people believe it spells out the beginnings of the Catholic Church. Verse 25, but they which you have already hold fast till I come. And that's the key there too, is that if you're not buying into this doctrine, just keep going in that direction until I come, and being the end of the tribulation. So that's that really sold it for me, that particular passage there. Now, I also believe that this one world church of Mystery Babylon it's not just the Catholic Church. I think it's just the way the church is set up as one leader is in control of quite a few people. As of when I did this first report, as of then, that was about a year ago. I just want to point to a verse that Jesus talks about in Matthew, where he talks about the differences between those who are the true church and the so-called world church. And that's in Matthew 7:13 and 14. Enter ye at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in threat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Well, it's interesting to think that the fact that the Catholic Church at this moment, well, as about a year ago, had a population that claimed to be Catholic of 1.3 billion people of the world approaching, and the world at the time was about 7.5 billion people total, which comes out to about 18% of the population is Catholic in the world. Kind of interesting. Sounds a little bit like the Broad Road. I won't say that everyone in the church believes as the hierarchy of the church does, but I really believe that Revelation 2:24 through 26 is talking about believers who don't believe in that system. And I've met some of these, but because of family tradition and they don't want to upset the apple cart, they stick with that faith and go into that church, even though they really believe in who Jesus Christ really is. So I don't think that the entire people that actually say they go to a Catholic church are necessarily following the doctrine of the Catholic Church. That was my little spiel and opening, and now we're just going to run through the first about, when I took chapter 17:2, I took it in more of a topic kind of a way rather than verse by verse, because the first part of chapter 17 really speaks to, really the first part is actually explained by the second part. So what I did is that when I found something that was in the first part, I included the second part to define it. So I did it more in a way of a topical study rather than a verse by verse. But I do include all the verses in chapter 17. So verse 1, and there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So what I'm going to do in this first part is actually describe these particular people and entities that John is describing in the way he is describing them. These are all visions that he's seeing, where he basically says, I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So the great whore is actually the false church. Satan's answer to his end-time church to be, again, he's copying everything Jesus did. So he's trying to mimic Jesus in every way to confuse everyone. Well, of course, the real church is in heaven, and we see that. And again, I'm not going to read every verse. I did them last week, but you can definitely look them up if you, or listen to last week's video. Then you see where it says many waters, which is it's describing people as described in Revelation 17:15. That one I will read. And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So the Bible actually defines that one. And also talks about the whore itself, which is basically a church, not a person. And so the basically symbolically saying that the entire church is a false church. Verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So the kings of the earth committed fornication. This shows that it's an unholy alliance between church and state during that period. Non-believers are always known as earth dwellers, typically in this portion in Revelation. So you can see here the kings of the earth, speaking of people that are non-believers, who have bought into this one world religion. In Revelation 17, 13, and 17, it's foretold in, so let me just read through those two verses. It kind of helps explain this a little bit. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. This is talking about the kings of the earth. So they're ultimately going to give their power unto the beast, and the beast being the Antichrist, which is more of the governmental side of the equation. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And of course, this is all foretold in chapters 14 and 18. Also Jeremiah. I might mention here that mad means to be so out of your mind that reason has left a person. That term mad is used in Jeremiah to kind of talk about these people. They're just being so deceived that they cannot reason and make sense of what really is going on there. The basic deception that Jesus talks about all through the Bible, particularly in Matthew and Revelation. Okay, also in verse 3 where it says a woman sit, and also we see it also in Revelation 17, 18, where it defines it. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So this particular case, the city most likely is Rome as a spiritual center of the world. As we go into Revelation 17:9, and here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And I got a few quotes here by different theologians and historians when it comes to this term on 7 hills. It's most likely Rome, as that's where the Vatican is, for one thing, but Rome was the city set on 7 hills. It was known as such to both pagan and Christian writers. Horace wrote, the gods who looked with favor on 7 hills. Or Ovid also added, but Rome looks around on the whole globe from her 7 mountains, the seat of the empire and abode of the gods. Augustine also wrote, Babylon is a former Rome and Rome is a later Babylon. In these verses, the city of Rome assuredly seems to be in view. The woman, the harlot, represents a religious system that will be revealed during the first part of the Great Tribulation period, after the true church has been removed from the earth. And this religious system, as a symbol given to us, indicates dominance and rides the Roman Empire at the beginning of the Great Tribulation period. I really like, I put this part in because I read the book and it's really good. Dave Hunt does an excellent job of explaining through Scripture how he can see that the hierarchy of the Roman Church really looks like the woman who rides the beast. So if you want a chance to dig in this even further, I highly recommend that book. And the other big thing is it's a whole idea of pushing this one world religion. That is happening today. And I showed these pictures the last time. This is what they're calling the Abrahamic Center. It's actually being built in Dubai as we speak. This is supposedly going to be those 3 buildings. One represents the Jewish nation, Jewish religion. One represents the Muslim religion, and one represents the Christian religion. And this is what, as of about a year ago, this is how far the construction had come. They expect it to be open sometime early this next in 23. So just it's all going to be on one spot with the idea that the three religions that look to Abraham basically as the founding of their religion, as the even though we definitely don't all think alike when it comes to the rest of the Bible. But that's the idea that the Pope is pushing. So that's why it just seems like he is really trying to apply for the job of being this end times false prophet. Back to verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Right there, that clue, full of names and blasphemy, it definitely sounds like something that's worldly, not of any kind of true coming from the Word of God. So 10 horns in this is what I'm pointing to, are 10 kings. And Revelation 17, 12 through 14 talks about this. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. He shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. I'm seeing these 10 regions of the world which have been identified via the one world system. But as it says, it hasn't happened yet. And this is this picture of what they divided the world up into. And this was actually done quite a while ago. It was a think tank, originated from the Club of Rome, and was established by the United Nations. The idea being of the Club of Rome was to give the task of uniting Europe and dividing the world into manageable blocks. And here's a map of it. And it's interesting that they called it the 10 Kingdoms. Sure sounds like the future of what Satan has planned. Now we get more back into the religious side with this scarlet-colored beast. Verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So the scarlet-colored beast is the Antichrist ruling over the restored Roman Empire. This is the idea that there's still a marriage between the two at this point. Kind of like what we're at right now is more the beginning before we get to the midpoint. So that the false prophet and the Antichrist are really working together. They're not separated yet, but at the midpoint is when the Antichrist actually eliminates the church part of this whole scenario. So right now, during his buildup, he is trying to show that he's a great guy, and that he believes in religion, and he's bringing the world religions together, that kind of a thing, coming in like a great politician. But it says full of names of blasphemy, reveals how far religion will have departed from the living Christ at that point. And particularly here in verse 4. And this is where it gets really fascinating when it comes to pointing to who we're talking about. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Clothed in purple and scarlet. Purple was the predominant color of the Roman imperialism. Every senator and consul wore a purple stripe as a badge of his position, and the emperor's robes were purple. Scarlet is the color adopted by the Roman Catholicism as their color of their, like the Pope wears quite a bit of red or scarlet. And it says decked with gold, shows the beauty of the outward display, but like the Pharisees, it is within full of dead man's bones and of all uncleanliness. Then the precious stones and pearls, though they may be genuine and are a sordid imitation of genuine heartfelt religion, the Lord Jesus said, "Woe unto you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you make you clean the outside of the cup and the platter. In other words, you look real good, but within they are full of extortion and excess." That comes out of Matthew 23:25. Then a golden cup of abominations is a religious intoxication of the anti-church, not anti-Christ, as a pseudo-religion, counterfeit Christianity, a fake and false gospel, and a sham and spurious system that is the cup which makes the world drunk. That's a quote from Jane Vernon McGee again. So now we pick up where I left off last week. And I can see I'm not going to get through even into chapter 18 at all. So much packed into this particular area. So starting here in verse 5 is where we left off last week. Upon her forehead a name written, a startling revelation of the character of this woman. She does not wear a crown, but rather the mark of her profession. Verse 5 here, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And then here in verse 6, And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So I see I see in Revelation that two places where these overcomers are spoken to by Jesus. And that's in Revelation 6, 9, and 10. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? Again, earth going back to earth dwellers. Then jump into Revelation 12, 11. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. So that basically anyone in the tribulation who does look to the Lord, the true Lord, will end up being killed. And verse 7 and 8. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore dost thou marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which I've already kind of explained most of it. Why dost I marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and it shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. That's a definite indication that it's evil. Every time we've mentioned the bottomless pit in Revelation, it's always talking about either the Antichrist or Satan. And go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they beheld the beast that was and is not and yet is. So basically, it's basically saying here that that this person is evil, number one, that he's been around since the foundation of the world. So he's been here before, and he was not for a period, and then he was again. And I think that's speaking to the idea of the Roman Empire. It fell, but it's coming back. So the beast, of course, we see talking about in Revelation 9:1. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven into the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And I believe this is when Satan was finally put out of heaven for good, and that he was sent to the earth. That was back at the midpoint. Then 11:7. When they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit, again, an indication of somebody evil, shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. That's the two witnesses. So, of course, the ultimate destination of this man coming out of the pit, in Revelation 19:20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, in which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone. Okay, verse 10. Now for the 7 kings, and there are 7 kings. Let me read this verse first. There are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. It's been a few, I only knew of one when I was first studying this, but I guess there's 2 other thoughts on this particular one. So I'll mention all 3. There are 7 kings, it's taken by some. This is a quote by Johnny Vernon McGee, so I'm not sure who Noel and Govett were, but he considers them excellent commentators on Revelation. To mean individual rulers, Govett gives this following list of the 7. Julius Caesar, who was assassinated. Tiberius, who was poisoned or smothered. Caligula, assassinated. Claudius, poisoned. Nero committed suicide. The one is refers to Domitian, who was living in John's day when this was being revealed to him, who was also assassinated. And the other is not yet come, refers to the Antichrist. Other expositors, which is Schofield and Walter Scott, Schofield I know for sure, considered these 7 as different forms of government through which Rome passed. They are listed as kings, consuls, dictators, deceivers, and military tribunes. The one is refers to the 6th or imperial form of government set up by Julius Caesar, under which John was banished by Domitian. The 7th and last, that is, has not yet appeared, will be satanic in form. It's a little more generic in nature. then I see the five kingdoms mentioned in Scripture as Egypt. And we count them as actually Egypt, Assyria, Nivea, Babylon, then Medo and Persia are separate. And then Greece. And the one that is Rome, which is the future one being revealed under so to get to 7, you get the 5 prior to Rome. Then you got Rome itself the first time. And then the future one being a revived Roman Empire under Satan's control. That's the one I kind of lean towards. But regardless of the interpretation adopted, the end in view is the same. The Antichrist rules over the reactivated Roman Empire. And so the only verse that we left out of that series we just did was Revelation 16. This really speaks to what will happen in chapter 18 when the Antichrist will turn all religions to worship him. And those that don't will be beheaded or killed in some other way. So ends any organized church except for the Antichrist worship of Satan. This happened at the midpoint and continued through the last 3.5 years via the mark. Did I read verse 11? Oh yeah, that's what I was wondering where I got the actual 6, because the 7th was actually based on this verse. I know Media and Persia are actually 2 separate. That's where I was leaning towards. So it's actually not. It's the 7 kingdoms were up to Rome, and then there was one more, the 8th, and that's what this verse indicates. Is of the 7 and goeth into perdition. That's basically saying that Rome is the last Rome is a combination of all the other 6. And notice I didn't put verse 16 in here. 1 second. Oh, there it is. So verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. So the whore, speaking again of this religious world system that will be destroyed by the Antichrist at the midpoint. So this happened at the midpoint, and it's spoken of in Revelation 13, 7 and 8. It was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the lambs slain from the foundation of the world. Then jumping to 20, verse 4. And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. So again, speaking to those that held out and did not follow the world system. So now moving on to chapter 18. I'll just, getting close here, so I won't dig way into it. I'll just talk about my opening and give you a little idea what we're going to head into next week. So Babylon chapter 18 is economic. The first is religious and the apostate church, which will enter into the Great Tribulation period. The second is political and commercial. The commercial center is loved by the kings of the earth, and the apostate church is hated by the kings of the earth, as we saw in chapter 17. The apostate church is destroyed by the kings of the earth when Christ returns. Political Babylon will be destroyed by the judgment of God. Obviously, Mystery Babylon, the apostate church, is destroyed first in the midst of the Great Tribulation, while commercial Babylon will be destroyed at the second coming of Christ. These two, that's where I really run into a lot of trouble with it being all in one place, because they get destroyed separately. So these two Babylons are not one in the same city. I personally believe that the Mystery Babylon is Rome, and that when it goes down in the midst of the Great Tribulation, the religious center shifts to Jerusalem, because it's at Jerusalem that the false prophet will set up his image of the Antichrist to be worshipped. Commercial Babylon is ancient Babylon, rebuilt as a commercial capital of the world, And this city is the final capital of the political power of the beast. So I believe it will be rebuilt, and it's based on the fact that in Isaiah 13, 19 through 22, I'll read it through here. In Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of Chaldeans, excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, kind of indicating that once it gets destroyed, it will be destroyed forever. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. There's actually a small little town there right this minute. And Babylon has been partially rebuilt by Iraq before, what's his name, was killed. So it definitely is not destroyed to the point where nobody can live there. Continuing in Isaiah, verse 21, but wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of dull creatures, and the owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. Sounds like a very evil place. And the wild beasts of the isles shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces, and her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. So this speaks of the fact that the ancient Babylon is to be rebuilt and destroyed. And this destruction is what I think is they're talking about in chapter 18. So I'm probably thinking we probably shouldn't dig into it now. I still got 3 more pages. And just started real quick, just kind of give you, got a couple of minutes here. At the end, I kind of done a little overview of what I think is going to kind of proceed from this point. Where did I put that? Oh, okay. Next chapter is when the final battle of the tribulation. Now, let's talk about chapter 19 takes place. It will take a few weeks, I see, will probably transpire in one day, starting with Babylon. I'm starting to see a progression that I think that what's basically going to happen is that, and as we read through chapter 18 and move into chapter 19, you're going to see where it seems like when the Lord returns with us, he's going to start at Babylon, destroy it. It's going to be burning. Then he's going to move to Petra to save the Jews, and that's where he gets all bloody. He gets bloody between Babylon and Petra from destroying armies. Then the final battle of the forces of the Antichrist, who are actually at this moment, when they cross the river, are forming up in the valley of Megiddo, preparing to meet the Lord in Jerusalem. So that when we get into Ezekiel 39 is actually the beginning of that battle at Jerusalem. Is what I believe is where we're heading, because it talks about the forces coming from the north. And if you look at where Megiddo is, got a map here somewhere. Up here, this is where Megiddo is, in this valley here. And that will be where the Antichrist is forming up his legions that just crossed the Euphrates, we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And so they're forming up here to get ready. And at this time, I think that Satan already sees that the Lord has returned, and he's starting his campaign at Babylon, then moving to Petra, and at the final battle of Ezekiel 38, moving into chapter the last part of chapter 16, and then also into chapter 19 happens at Jerusalem. So that's probably the basic outline of what's going to be happening in the next few weeks, except for next week. No Sunday school class next week. So is that thick as mud? Let's end with a word of prayer. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time to look in your word, Lord. And thanks for helping me so much, Lord, with other fine teachers who have tried to decipher. And we definitely can see, Lord, that we're heading towards that time frame you spoke of in Daniel, where things as we get closer and closer to the end are pointing to your soon return. And looking forward to that day so much, Lord. And but keep us busy and engaged and reaching those still on the looking for a relationship with you. We give you all the praise and thanks. In Jesus' precious name I pray. And all the people said, Amen.
Stand outside. Because it's cold in here. It's chilly. It's cold in here. Hot. What you mean they up here? Oh, really? Oh,
There's no choir next
okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh.
I figured now. Yeah, because next Sunday we're not
We'll
performing.
probably forget to show up.
Oh, there's,
I know.
you must have one service.
We'll probably be here